for lesson 1.2, we're going to review computation with integers so we can abstract, multiply, divide integers. So first of all, what an integer is, in case we need to remember, it is whole numbers, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, and their opposites. So that means that it's both positive and negative numbers. Okay, and then we said whole number and the opposites, so let's make sure we know what opposite means. If two numbers are opposites, that means they are the same distance from zero. So if you're thinking about a number line, 2 is 2 spaces from 0, and negative 2 is also 2 spaces from 0, just in the opposite direction. So those are opposites. And absolute value is the positive, so it's never going to be negative, it's a positive distance a number is from 0. So similar to opposite, but we don't care which direction it is. We just want to know how many spaces from 0 is it in either direction. It's going to be a positive value. Okay, so our first set of problems, name the opposite. So negative 6 is 6 to the left of 0, so the opposite would then be positive 6, 6 to the right of 0. The opposite of 18 is negative 18, so it's on the opposite side of 0. And then 0 doesn't really have an opposite because it is right in the middle, so it's 0 space from 0. Okay, now we're going to give the absolute value. So negative 6 is 6 spaces away from 0. So if you start at negative 6 on a number line and you count back up to 0, it's 6 spaces away. 18 is 18 spaces away from 0. And 0 is 0 spaces away from 0. So again, absolute value is always positive. So I'm actually going to write that note off to the side so I remember that. Now there are cases where you can have a negative on the in addition to an absolute value problem, and that could change it, but the absolute value itself is always going to be positive. All right, now we're solving using integers. So just to refresh our memory of these rules, anytime we have a subtraction problem, the easiest way to make sure we're not making mistakes is to change it into addition. So we're going to change to adding the opposite. We tend to make less mistakes if we turn it into an addition problem first before we solve. Another note that I might want to add is that if they're the same sign, we add. If they're different signs, we subtract. All right, so then number 7, for example, negative 9 plus a negative 12. So I lost 9 things, and then I lost another 12, so I'm losing even more. So that's going to follow that first rule. They're the same sign, we're going to add. So I'm going to add 9 plus 12, and that is 21. And then we're going to keep the same sign. So I have negative 21. Number 8, that's going to follow that second rule. They're different signs. We're going to subtract. So we're going to do 13 minus 6. And 13 minus 6 is 7. And then I'm going to add to this rule. If we have the same sign, we keep that sign like we did on number 7. They're both negative, so my answer is going to be negative. If they're both positive, my answer will be positive. If they're a different sign, we're going to take the sign, of larger absolute value. So in number 8 then, we know the answer is going to be something with a 7. So I need to look at which one has a larger absolute value. So the absolute value of negative 13 is 13, and the absolute value of 6 is 6. So the 13 has a bigger absolute value, and the 13 was negative. So that tells me my answer is going to be negative. So negative 7. So think of it as which one is there more of? There's more negatives. There's 13 negatives, but only 6 positives. So there's more negatives, so my answer is going to be negative. So we can use that same kind of thing for number 9. They're different signs, so I know I'm going to subtract. I'm going to take 17 minus 11, and that is going to give me 6. Which one is there more of? There's 17 positives. There's 11 negatives. There's definitely more positives. So my answer is going to be positive 6. You can write the plus sign for positive 6. You just don't have to. It's implied that if there's no sign, then that is a positive. Number 13. So this is an example of when we're going to do that subtraction. So we're going to change this into the minus sign. It's going to change into a plus sign. In order to do that, the number right after it has to become the opposite. So I change that to a plus, and that makes that positive 4 turn into a negative 4. You're always going to change the number after it, not before it. Just the one number that comes directly after that minus sign. So now I really have negative 13 plus another negative 4. So I'm going to follow the rules for the same sign. So I'm going to add 13 plus 4 is 17. And because they're both negative, it's going to be negative 17. Keep that common sign. Now we're going to switch over to multiplying and dividing. So those have different rules. If they're the same sign, it's going to be positive. If they're different signs, it's going to be negative. And you can make that note off to the side if you would like to. So we can say multiply, divide, same sign, positive, different signs, going to be negative. All right, so these are the same sign, so they're going to be positive. So every two negatives, when you're multiplying and dividing, are going to kind of cancel each other out. So all I have to do is I know my answer is going to be positive, and I'm going to do 6 times 5 is 30. On number 12, those are different signs, so I know my answer is going to be negative. So I'm going to go ahead and put that negative down there already. And then I'm going to do 32 divided by 4, and that is 8. So the my answer will be negative 8. All right, for the word problems. During a football game, Ryan had rushes of 12 yards, 6 yards, and 9 yards before losing 7 yards. So he gained positive 12 plus another 6 plus another 9. And then he lost 7. How many total yards did he gain? So where would he be at then? So if I add 12 plus 6, that's going to be 18. And then 18 plus 9 is going to be 27. And then I still have to do the 27 minus 7. I end up at 20. So he's gained 20 yards altogether. And number 14, our last one, Leo went hiking last weekend. He started at an elevation, that means a height above sea level of 19 meters. 19 meters below sea level. So he actually started below sea level, 19 meters below sea level. So if sea level is at 0, 19 below is going to be negative. So this really represents the number negative 19. Then he went up in elevation. He went up 9. So he was at negative 19. Then he went up 9. And then after he went up 9, the last thing he did is he went down another 8. So we're going to add to this at the end minus to go down 8. And then I'm just going to look at one part at a time. So let's focus on this first problem here. Negative 19 plus 9. They're different signs we're going to subtract. 19 minus 9 is 10. Take the sign of the bigger absolute value. That's a negative, so negative 10. And then we're going to bring down that minus 8. Again, I don't want to leave that minus, so I'm going to change this into adding the opposite. That's going to make it plus negative 8. So negative 10 plus negative 8, they have the same sign now. So I'm going to add. And that gives me negative 18. And we are talking in meters, so that's negative 18 meters. And he has negative 18 meters. Or we can say 18 meters below sea level. If I say the negative, that implies below. If I don't say the negative, then I want to say below sea level. And then the last thing I want to do is in the summary, I'm just going to add one thing here and say that negative numbers are below 0. Their values going down. So taking away something, and like in this case, down below sea level. So those are examples of when we might use negative numbers.